captivating viewing on DSTV this month. Cold cases are reopened in the hope that new technology will prove the alleged guilty innocent. The law knows no boundaries as Alaska's finest brave the elements in the name of justice. And an in-depth look at the devastation and trauma caused by discovering there's a killer in the family. DSTV, so much more appealing.
The Tonight Show with Jay Leno is back on CNBC Africa. It's a Date with Jay, weeknights at 9 p.m. only on DSTV Channel 410.
This live debate is sponsored by the Securities and Exchange Commission of Nigeria.
Welcome back to CNBC Africa's special coverage of the Nigerian Capital Market Conference. We're reaching you from Lagos, Nigeria. We have a distinguished panel of guests discussing the big issues relating to the Nigerian capital market. In this session, I want us to focus on efforts to deepen the market, because we've just talked a bit about collective investment schemes, and we see that in markets like Brazil, as that General has very often mentioned, that collective investment schemes actually lead the market, and that is not the case in Nigeria. Mr. Osifo, can you just give us your thoughts on why that is the case?
Well, like you summed up, it's a market. When it's easy to make money doing the simple things, people will gyrate towards the simple things. When the simple things disappear, people move towards the more difficult things to do. I made the comment of the pension funds. What that means, right, is that a number of us have to create products for them to help them invest in the market. Mm-hmm. When people like us look at the actual profitability of some of our other businesses in the right fashion, very much in relation to the point Bolaji made earlier on, does this business make money? You now move towards a business that makes money. And that's what is starting to go on. And that's why the change will occur, in Nigeria, because we're starting to say what makes sense for us, what are the right products, and how do we use these products. If Luca brings a client in who wants a particular type of product, it is my responsibility as an operator to create a product which will make me money. But I think in the past, in this environment, we've never had to do that because we could make money from trading because the market was going up 70% in a year. But now we have to think, how can we make money for ourselves?
So you're saying there's need to tighten regulation to force people to do the right things and create these new products. Is that what you're saying?
No, I don't think regulation forces people to create new products. I think regulation ensures we do the right thing. I think the innovation issue, and that I think there was a capacity discussion, forces us to create new products. If we're operators in the market, if I want to be number one, number two in this market, I have to do something different. And I think it's the innovation side, which is very important, which we haven't exhibited enough of in the capital markets, bond funds. It's a very simple thing. We've just started doing bond funds in this market,
Mr. Tay, let me get your views on this.
I share the points that the last speaker made. First, there needs to be an enabling environment that fosters innovation. So we do not expect that regulation is a burden, but the regulation creates the enabling environment such that the higher performing people are focused on doing the right things. There are many opportunities in the product space. This is a country that has at least 50% Muslim population. There's no reason why we haven't done much more in terms of leveraging Islamic products in the same way that Malaysia has done, or some of the Middle Eastern countries. There's clearly an opportunity in that regard, and we, the regulators, are working on ensuring that we have the right kind of framework. You've seen some of the people who've been successful in Islamic finance coming from non-Islamic countries, because they've basically transformed a zero-coupon bond to an Islamic product. And so creating an environment where there's much more innovation is extremely critical. And it goes back to issues around capacity and building knowledge, but also communicating much more effectively, either with investors or with other stakeholders. I mean, we've talked about earlier in the session, the MD of the asset management company talked about his expectation that he can do securities lending. There's no reason why we shouldn't do that, because that will build liquidity in our markets, whether repos or whatever else. We've talked about exchange-traded funds. So there are clearly a lot of opportunities. We need the capital market operators thinking. We, the regulators, need to make sure that we're ahead of them, such that we're creating the framework to ensure that only the high-performing, honest people are making money from innovation or whatever comes into our markets.
I want to bring Mr. Chike-Obi into the discussion right now, because you're sitting on a huge portfolio of securities, which are collateral, obviously, for the non-performing loans. And how can AMCON contribute positively, so to speak, to the development of this capital market? More so, like you mentioned, with regards to creating new products.
Let me take something that Lucas said earlier. AMCON started operations in November, and we had to buy the non-performing loans by the end of the year, and we met that deadline. We have 2 more deadlines, and I'm saying this for all the foreign investors. By March 31st, we'll have taken out all the non-performing loans in the industry. We will meet that deadline. And by the end of the second quarter, we should have most of the intervened banks merged and fully functioning again by end of the second quarter. We will meet those deadlines.
All right.
So you can
look forward to that.
Referring to how we can help the capital markets, like I said, we're going to be a big consumer of the capital markets. I do have those securities, and if anybody comes up with ways in which they can start securities lending, we will form the genesis, the critical mass, where people can go and borrow securities. It helps them, and it helps us enhance our yield. So in any way that AMCON, as with a huge balance sheet, can help capital markets, will be there to support the capital markets.
Luca, do you want to contribute?
And exactly that. We have what I would say the driving force. You know, every once in a while, for the system to move to the next level, you need a shock. And I think this is the kind of shock we're expecting. There's 2 points I wanted to make, which is one, it's very good to hear this type of conversation, because we knew what happened in the developed markets in terms of crisis. The regulators and the watchdogs were caught unaware of what had happened. Here, the regulators saying, I want to be ahead of the market makers. That's the first point, so it's a positive point. However, I feel that it's a long-term view, which is a safer view, but in the shorter term, all this talk about new products and progress, it needs to be taken with a pinch of salt. It's going to take time. So it's good that we're thinking about this, but it's going to take time. But for AMCON and what they intend to do by the end of June is the fact that, of course, we need the support from what we have seen in the past from other markets of the banks and the operators. And it's difficult here because we're coming out of a market where, unfortunately, margin calls, it's what potentially drew to some trouble. So the risk taking and the speculation. However, all of this needs to be facilitated for the investors by the banks who have the capital and need to work with the brokers and potentially helping them with some capital. So the relationship needs to get closer in order to facilitate this level of liquidity in a mentality where buying and selling is just part of the process. Whether here sometimes if somebody's shorting or if you're selling something, there's always a doubt, what do you know that I don't know? And that needs to be taken away by a level of we're continuously buying and selling.
Mr. Asifo, let me get your views on this, because we're talking about institutionalizing the market, we're talking about creating new products. Obviously, this needs some level of intellectual capacity, as Bolaji has mentioned. The regulators have also already mentioned that they're looking to train their people, but would you say these are like baby steps, like some are calling it, as opposed to perhaps importing this talent into Nigeria? Do you think we can can we train people to understand derivatives and so forth?
I think definitely is the short answer, and I'll look at it in 2 ways, right? The first way is the collaborative way. The operators start to work together, and the operators start to talk to each other a lot more. It's a lot cheaper if I wanted to bring in a trainer from wherever in the world, whether in the UK or the States, than it is if I sent 2 people from my team to the UK to do that. So I speak to Bolaji, and I said to Bolaji, you have people Other people have people. Let's train the people. We need to train the people because we cannot afford to bring in everybody from outside the country. On the other hand, we definitely have to bring in people who have the experience, who have seen it before. I call it seeing the future.
Right.
When somebody sees the future, they can help you. We are in a situation in this market where we don't have enough people who have seen the future. Talking about baby steps, you made a comment about these new products. I don't think they're baby steps. I don't have the exact figure of the subnational bonds which were raised last year, but literally what you had was loans going off the bank's balance sheets to the investors' balance sheets. So investors now feel comfortable buying a subnational bond, which they were not comfortable doing a few years ago. What happens after that is people like ourselves get together and say, let's create a bond fund, which we can now sell to the retail investor who is not able to participate in a larger investment. Is that a baby step? I'm not sure it's a baby step. What I think actually is that it is actually happening. And I go back to the DG's point about the yield curve. This thing started, we didn't have a yield curve once upon a time. We created a yield curve. We created federal government bonds. Yeah. We then went on and created subnationals and corporate bonds. Right. Earlier on this year, we also had the first Nigerian Eurobond. So you have a situation now where we're setting benchmarks as well in dollars. Right. So I don't see them as baby steps. I see them as actually big steps going on.
At this point, we need to actually summarize, and I'll start with you, Bolaji. Mr. Osaze Osito, you'll get the opportunity to speak again. But Bolaji, can you just, in 30 seconds, just give us your final thoughts to close the call?
Final comment from me is talent is spread too thin around the industry. There is a fair amount of talent in the industry. Whether we like it or not, the search for talent, perhaps more than capital, will be the reason that this industry will consolidate.
Mr. Chigobi.
My final comment is that this is a very hopeful situation that we're all here today talking about these things. I think the fact that people like the Director General, the new NSC administrator who's coming in, and my humble self are here now trying to work on these things together tells you that the people who have worked before us have set a foundation that we can now build on, and I'm very hopeful that things will move forward in the near future.
Sasipo?
Can Nigeria lead? The answer is a big yes. I think we understand the foundations, we're building them, and the question is we're going to execute this time. And I believe this generation doesn't have a choice.
From my point of view, the final thoughts are in two paths. Number one is we live in extremely turmoil moments at this time within especially frontier market, and Nigerian market has the opportunity to actually be a recipient of this cash flow for frontier markets, which is trying to find a home. And number two is watch the space in terms of the AMCOM. We have a leader that we've seen today that has a can-do attitude. If he delivers what he's just said today, I think we're probably the most exciting time of the last 3 years on this market.
Well,
the stock exchange is going through a transformation program which is ongoing to ensure that we operate an efficient, transparent business that that will be committed to integrity and discipline, and to ensure that investors get a good return for their investment in the market.
Finally, you, Ms. Ote.
I have no doubt in my mind that we will build a world-class capital market, just given what every representative of a stakeholder has highlighted today. We've got huge financing needs, particularly in infrastructure. We've got hardworking people, entrepreneurial zeal in terms of structuring, innovation, knowledge. We have all that it takes. This is our moment. We just need to seize it. So we will lead, certainly. Thank you.
And we all look forward to it. Thank you so much for your thoughts. And thank you for watching. First of all, we thank our distinguished, fabulous audience here of capital market operators, bankers, and investors. We also thank our panel, especially. Thank you so much for giving us your insights. And thank you for watching. You've been watching the CNBC Africa special coverage of Nigerian Capital Market Conference from Lagos. See you next time. Right. Thank you.
This live debate is sponsored by the Securities and Exchange Commission of Nigeria.